Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett. Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Let's have a show.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
CYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Don't worry, we will get to all of the conversation about Jimmy Kimmel and a sad, sad man and the FCC in a couple of minutes. But we have ourselves a little bit of news that some might consider breaking. And this would be all about the Department of Justice issuing a warrant for the arrest of former FBI Director James Comey. So let's get into some of the details on this. You may remember that James Comey posted himself a really nice, beautiful, friendly, kind of a seashell Instagram post. This is really what he does a lot of these days. He'll get out and he'll post pictures of him walking in the woods, thinking about justice today. I'm James Comey. And then he'll post another picture. I was at the ocean today and I drank a cup of salty coffee. And also justice. Essentially, he's that cringy girl from your high school class who thought she was a really good writer. And you remember last year, he got out there, no, not the indictment, we'll get to that. And he posted this picture of some seashells. And he said, wow, a cool shell formation on my beach walk. And it was shells arranged to say 8647. And that spawned a whole series of shenanigans. So let's get into the announcement from Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. He has been the Attorney General for less than 1 month. We're already seeing far more orders for arrests, a series of indictments, a series of subpoenas, actually getting John Brennan, the former CIA director, to agree to come in voluntarily so that there isn't a subpoena. And then after that agreement, we have this.
Good afternoon. Today, a grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned an indictment against James Comey on 2 counts. The first count is that on or about May 15th of last year, he knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. Count.
Now, before we get into the counts, there's 2 counts here. You get a nice little
Answer there. The Daily Double.
You're going to get a nice little daily double out of this. It is important, I'll say up front. Normally, again, I wait. I give you all the clips, then I give you my take. I'm going to let you know. I'm going to give you my take right up front here. This would be an action from the Department of Justice clamping down on some matters of rhetoric by making this announcement in this way. Now, yes, the indictment did just come down. But in the way that Blanche talks, I want you to keep in mind the things that have just happened over the weekend with the 3rd major assassination attempt of the President of this United States in the last 2 years. Continue, Acting Attorney General.
2, same day, May 15th, 2025, that the defendant, James Comey, knowingly and willfully transmitting in interstate commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill the President of the United States. Both of these counts carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years.
Now, let's actually get into some of these indictments. What do they specifically allege? We've got this over on the B-roll. Radio crew, imagine printer paper with words on it and a special little DOJ stamp. That's what you're missing out on. So let me break into it here. The specific charges against James Comey involve 2 particular felonies here. Number 1, threatening the President of the United States. And then number 2, crossing interstate lines to threaten the President of the United States. That would be, in this particular instance, what he's being smacked with. Now you may say, hey, look, Tony, I mean, all of that over this, all over, the 8, the 6, 4, 7. So as a quick reminder, to 86 means a couple of different things. There's connotation and then there is denotation. Denotation would be the specific definition. The specific definition of the term 86 in this case would be the number. The connotation would be in what field you were using the term 86 as a code for getting rid of something on an order. Again, to quote the famous SpongeBob episode, 86 those patties, crabs, that kind of a thing. Or in the police environment, it has been used before to mean an individual who has been killed. It's been used a lot of ways. It's been used in Hollywood, it's been used in the mob. It's been used a lot in a lot of different manners. However, what Comey is clearly indicating here is that he wanted the president to be removed. Now, whether from this earth or whether from office remains to be seen. But this is what the Department of Justice is clamping down on. Now, right off the top of the bat here, right up front, we've got two cases this evening where individuals are being looked into and they are in trouble because they broke rule number 1. They opened their mouths. Now, I haven't seen this clip played today, but I will remind you that May 19th of last year, 2025, we had on Nicole Wallace over on, at the time, MSNBC, now MS Now, asking Comey about this. So what are you, what were you doing here? This was the original answer that he gave. He didn't say, oh, look, I just think that Trump needs to be thrown out of office. He took a bit of a different approach. Here you go.
You were back in the middle of a political firestorm.
Yeah, for walking on the beach with my wife, so.
Yeah, it's for walking. Good. Off to a great start.
I don't know how we ended up here. It never occurred to me that it was any kind of controversial thing, but that's the time we live in.
So take me back to the walk on the beach.
Here's where he's going to get himself in trouble. Right at the top. If you want people to believe you, be honest and transparent up front. That is the rule. That's the rule, even if you make a mistake. So, great example here. When I was in the WHCA dinner over the weekend, I was originally texting WIBC host Tony Katz and then Jason Hammer with the very small amount of cell phone data that I had. And I said that I believed that the word in the room was that the shooter in the event had been killed. That is what CNN reported. That is what TMZ reported. Others were saying that. Now, later, we found out that wasn't the case. And so I made that correction. Transparent right up front. Hey, things were chaotic. I am not perfect. I do, in fact, make mistakes. Last night's show, I think I said Marriott and Hilton interchangeably a number of times. It was the Hilton, not the Marriott. You think I would have looked up at the building as I walked in or seen that stupid swirly H everywhere? Things do happen. Does Comey take that route here? Look, I see how people took this. I made a mistake. No, he decides to lie.
We were walking on the beach. We went to the beach to prepare for this week, which was the launch of my book, and to think about the book and to prepare to answer questions about it.
Remember when I said, I'm thinking about justice? I wasn't joking. This man's like, I go to the beach to think about, man, what am I going to do about this book? Okay.
And we were walking back towards the road, and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with no.
We were walking back, and I go, my goodness there, darling, look. It appears as though these shells are arranged in some kind of curious formation. Now, if you've ever been in public, there's a good chance that those shells have been arranged into probably some type of disturbing shape. I mean, I don't know exactly why I'd be like, look, darling, someone has arranged these shells in a kind of phallic arrangement. I mean, that's more likely what you are to find. Or, if you're in the remoter part of the world, perhaps help arranged excitedly. He's going to say...
numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, why would someone put an address in the sand? And I said, I don't know.
So they're walking, he says. And they see look, darling, look, I see numbers. And suddenly Nicolas Cage pops out, look, a clue for the Declaration of Independence. And Comey looks at it and goes, what do you think of that, Patrice? Patrice says, oh, James, my goodness, I do believe someone's left their address. I don't know why someone would leave the door numbers of their address, and perhaps they were trying to remember the order the numbers were in. You guys know, how you go, walks on the beach, and you just arrange your home's address in the sand? And then James Comey, Mr. Instagram boy, he gets out there and he's like, I think I shall arrange photos. Beautiful look, 8647. What a cool formation on the beach. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. You don't have to lie. That's one of the reasons he's in trouble here. The reason that you don't get the benefit of the doubt is when you already come up with some wild, insane backstory. You don't have to do that. Just say people are taking it out of context. In restaurants, people are saying 86, get that out of here, L, and hold the mustard. You could have done that. You could have said, I just want meant removed from office, hopefully by, impeachment or by an investigation, or maybe, the Lord takes him up one day like Elijah. I don't know. I mean, I don't want the president of the United States to be hurt. He could have said that, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. And so now we're getting the extra stuff here. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys to the commercial side of the break before the FCC gives me a talking to. And it's a lot more here on the live stream, not interrupted by those pesky commercials. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. While the children are away listening to pre-recorded ads on dental care, allow us to continue. So Todd Blanche, who, again, in under a month has done more work than I've seen a lot of attorney generals do in their entire term, he started getting a couple of media questions. So, for example, hey, why are we just now getting this indictment, this investigation a year later? May 19th, 2025, that was last year. It was like almost a whole year away.
Director Comey posted this almost a year ago. Why bring this case now? Did you always feel like this was a strong prosecution, or did something change recently?
So she's asking the question, hey, there's been like a lot of news lately. Was there something? I hate gaslighting questions from reporters. This would be a leading question. What you should have asked is, hey, does this have anything to do with the assassination attempt? Like, now you're taking all of these in the to-do pile and you're saying, all right, we're going to take threats against the president more seriously so that if the media won't voluntarily bring down the rhetoric, we're going to bring down the hammer. That's a thing. That would have been the appropriate and honest way to ask the question. But instead, we danced around the mulberry bush chasing the weasel. So Blanche is going to address it head on.
This investigation just didn't come now. It's the result of a lot of work by law enforcement over the past year. We don't time when we bring cases around anything other than when the investigation is at a place where we should go to the grand jury. And that's exactly what we did in this case as well.
Now, again, it's a grand jury indictment. We'll see how it plays out. Do I think that they're going to get him on that? I absolutely have no idea. I don't know. I'm not going to postulate for you and speculate whether I think this is going to be a slam dunk of a case. What I will say, however, is that now we get to the key question, because this is where we're going to pivot into the Jimmy Kimmel stuff. Free speech. So whenever you say something that's very mean and awful and hurts my feelings, then I get to declare that it's hate speech and it's stochastic terrorism, and we need to ban you from social media and your bank account, and also probably put you in re-education camps. Sorry, just bringing up the old COVID argument. You drive over a pride flag on a street, it's prison in life for you. But when I say something that's really disgusting or concerning, well, then it's free speech. This kind of a double standard has hit both sides pretty evenly, although one side has certainly used the law and leverage of this in a much more heavy-handed fashion over the last couple of years. Here's the question about, well, Comey has the right to say this kind of stuff about the president.
That shows that Mr. Comey intended for President Trump to be harmed. And then secondarily, for critics who say, where does free speech end and an actual threat of violence begin?
I don't know what critics say that, especially today, but it's not a very difficult line to look at, and it's not, in my mind, a difficult line for one to cross over one way or the other.
So again, Comey could have avoided all of this, had he just said, and there, by the way, regarding defamation and intent or incitement, you have to prove motive. You have to prove motive. So for example, if there is a situation in which I argued that someone did something, and they said that they didn't, they were going to sue me for defamation, they not only have to prove that I was incorrect, that I falsified that report, number two, that I didn't check in with them to clarify, and then number three, they have to prove that I knew that I was lying and I did it anyway. Again, if Comey would have come forward and said, I didn't mean 8647 like this. I see, how a lot of people took it. That's not how I meant it. I wasn't talking like death. That's a little exaggeratory. I would never want political violence. If he would have tried that, then there wouldn't have been a really good case here. But since he started it off with a lie, it's way worse for him now.
We cannot. You are not allowed to threaten the President of the United States of America. That's not my decision. That's Congress's decision and a statute that they passed that we charge multiple times a year.
Now that you need to pay attention to. That is going to be a huge thing that we discuss tonight. Administration officials under the Trump administration saying, you want to gripe at someone? Gripe at Congress. Congress passes the law. My job, you've heard this from Tom Homan, you've heard this from other ICE directors like Todd Lyons, my job is to uphold the law. You'll hear this from Lee Zeldon of the Environmental Protection Agency, slapping around Rosa DeLauro and Menendez from New Jersey today. We got to bring the radio crew back. We're going to talk a little bit more. Comey responded, and then, of course, Kimmel. Big night tonight. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. James Comey's got a response because, of course, I told you, Mr. Instagram boy, he can't help himself. So he gets out here and right away, it's time, turn on the waterworks. He's got to get his own little Instagram clip out there. Here you go.
Well, they're back. This time about a picture of seashells on a North Carolina beach a year ago. And this won't be the end of it. But nothing has changed with me. I'm still innocent. I'm still not afraid. And I still believe in the independent federal judiciary. So let's go. But it's really important that all of us remember this is not who we are as a country. This is not how the Department of Justice is supposed to be. And the good news is we get closer every day to restoring those values.
So where in that clip does he say, he says, I'm innocent. Where in that clip does he say, hey, I didn't arrange those seashells? Where does he say that? I can't believe I would be in trouble for finding a picture and then sharing it with the public. I can't believe, did he say that? No. Don't begin your big, huge defense by lying. Good tip for life. All right, let's move on to a bit of the concept of this whole, it's just free speech to say whatever. Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel is very, very, very sad. And he is very, very, very sad because, again, before the WHCA dinner, when he was essentially doing a little pre-satire where he thought he would make fun of the president, again, because, by the way, that is what the WHCA dinner is about. It is about the president making fun of the press and the press making fun of the president. That's what it's for. And it's supposed to be a disarming thing. It's good to get out there and laugh at each other. It is. It's a healthy thing for society. It's one of the things that, for example, during the Drew Carey era, that Whose Line Is It Anyway did fairly well. And that's one of the reasons also the show is so insufferable now with what's her name, the new host. You need a little bit of the both sides making fun of stuff that works. The Babylon Bee does this exceptionally well, and it's why people don't like The Onion as a satire site anymore. When you only pick fun at one side, it doesn't work so well. This is one of the reasons why Jimmy Kimmel's not funny. If Jimmy Kimmel made fun, if you wanted to be Mr. Political Comedy Late Night Show host, again, you can do that. You make fun of both sides. You do. And if you do, people give you grace on things. But when you get out there and say the awkward stuff and then something bad happens the next day, you're going to get scorned for it. So as a reminder, this is the clip that Kimmel, or this is the beginning of his little satire WHCA dinner address before the attempted assassination. All right, it was during the week before.
Our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow.
Okay, so it is very clear to everyone, to you, me, Jimmy in the back, whatever. It is very, very, very clear that in this instance, in this situation, Kimmel was suggesting Melania wants Trump to die. She doesn't like him. She's in a marriage she doesn't like. There's this weird thing on the left where they're always suggesting they hate the marital partner. Now, don't get me wrong. There's jokes on the right about this as well. I've heard about this before. You've heard about this before. The Barack and Michelle hating each other and like the Big Mike thing. You've heard about the Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. Well, I mean, that kind of everyone points that out. But on the right, those being the jokes there are on the left, there's a weird fascination with talking about the married couple running away from them or wanting the other one to die so they can go be with somebody else. You've seen this with Jennifer Welch and Joy Reid, talking about how J.D. Vance can't wait to leave his wife and the mother of his children, Usha Vance, so that he can actually go be with Erica Kirk, because they're sick, nasty individuals. And here you have clearly right up front, that's the joke he was making. Melania hates Trump. She wants him. She can't wait for him to be dead. Then there was the assassination attempt, and understandably, Trump was upset because any husband worth his salt, if someone says, hey, your wife wants you to be dead, I actually kind of understand the husband responding, you know what? I think you should lose your job. I think you should be fired. Any husband on earth who responded that way, yeah, I'm sure. Makes sense to me. And then Melania got out there and also said, Kimmel shouldn't be allowed to spread this hate, into homes, that kind of a thing. So Kimmel, again, approaches the crowd. He has an opportunity to say, hey, look, I made a joke. Clearly the timing was terrible. I hear you. I apologize. I'm still going to, do jokes that are critical of the president, but that's just where we are. Does he do this? No. He lies about the kind of joke he told. Not helpful.
You know how sometimes you wake up in the morning and the first lady puts out a statement demanding you be fired from your job? We've all been there, right? Seeing yet another Twitter vomit storm. And a call to fire me from our first lady, Melania Trump, saying I should be fired because of a joke I made, again, 5 nights ago. It was a pretend roast. I said, our first lady, Melania, is here. Look at her, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow, which...
Here's where he's gonna shoot himself in the foot.
Obviously was a joke about their age difference.
Oh, they're the age different. Don't do this. Obviously, it was a joke about him being really old, right? I mean, clearly. Again, he didn't touch that with a 10-foot pole during the Biden administration. Never have we actually heard from Jimmy Kimmel this kind of joke before. Oh, no, it's a joke about age differences. And then he makes it even worse because liars can't leave it alone. They have to embellish the embellishment.
And the look of joy we see on her face every time they're together.
So because she has a straight face, because she maintains a straight face, because she believes, again, coming from where she's come from, and again, her career and what she's done previously, the straight face in public, very, very common. That's one of the things she does. She has kind of the Vogue fashion model air about her. Yeah, comes with the territory. So I was saying, it was a joke about how everything's always chaotic and so is the age differences.
It was a very light roast joke about the fact that he's almost 80 and she's younger than I am. It was not by any stretch of the definition a call to assassination, and they know that. I've been very vocal for many years speaking out against gun violence.
Okay, so that part is true. It was not a call for the assassination of Trump. It was a hopeful expectation. Two things can be true at once. He did not get out there and say, hey, you should kill Donald Trump. No. However, when the media goes around, again, you can say that the brewery up in northern Wisconsin that said, no free beer yet, there is a joyful hope for the death of Donald Trump. There's an expectation and excitement for it. That is different. That's gross. Now, does that violate FCC rules and regulations? We'll get into that. But right up front, don't lie about it. You do hope for Donald Trump to be dead. Are you seriously telling me that if Donald Trump passed away tonight, that you would get on TV the next day and be able to hold down the grin that darn well would appear on your face? Don't play these games. No one believes them.
In particular, but I understand that the First Lady had a stressful experience over the weekend, and probably every weekend is pretty stressful in that house. And also, I agree.
Bad joke. So, almost shot. But come on, every weekend stressful around Trump because, he's crazy. He's always out there doing his antics, So it's probably, dude, read the room. And not just the room full of handpicked people that you're having to clap when the light for applause pops up on the LED.
That hateful and violent rhetoric is something we should reject. I do, and I think a great place to start to dial that back would be to have a conversation with your husband about it, because...
There we go. Then it's all Donald Trump fault anyway. Beautiful. Radio crew will send you guys over to the commercial. We're going to talk about this FCC stuff on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, so now we get into, is the FCC going to take ABC off the air? Because again, there are rules for what's called spectrum. Spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum, there is a portion of the AM band, the FM band, and then the higher frequency for television that are reserved. And they are reserved by the federal government, and then they are licensed out to various broadcasting companies. Now, again, with the age of the internet, Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, he's got a pretty decent idea to deregulate a lot of this, because the government having a lot of special rules that apply to certain cable companies that don't apply to cable companies like CNN or Fox News, but do apply to ABC and CBS is kind of weird. It's kind of strange. So, if there's a Daily Wire show that is on the live stream or this show, here, when we're on YouTube, and if it's an only YouTube night, I have a different set of rules that I have to follow than on a night where we're nationally syndicated. Even now, during the commercial break, the TV and the radio crews are away. I have a different set of rules that I get to follow during this time. I try to keep the standard high anyway, just so that I don't accidentally goof. But this is the statement. CNN reported this today. Is Brendan Carr going to take away ABC's license because they don't fire Jimmy Kimmel? Shock face.
We've got some breaking news on the fight between the Trump administration and Jimmy Kimmel. The FCC is preparing to challenge the licenses of ABC affiliate stations. And a source tells CNN the process will begin as early as this afternoon. The licenses in question are not up for renewal for years, but the FCC says it can review them earlier. So far, ABC has stuck by Jimmy Kimmel after President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump demanded he be fired over a joke he told last week about Melania having, quote, a glow like an expectant widow. Here's how Kimmel defended himself last night.
And we're not going to listen to that because so far I've looked into some of these reports. I haven't seen anything yet. Now, do I think that the FCC should go in there and kind of retaliate against ABC regarding this kind of a thing? No, I don't. Because as I'm watching kind of the general social media sphere, what I'm seeing personally are a lot of Americans who are starting to carve out some of the insane people. And I'm sure you've seen this. I've seen this regarding friends of mine over on Facebook who are normally nice, kind of decent people. And in the last couple of years, they've just snapped. Something has snapped. And now every conspiracy theory they totally believe, doesn't matter what evidence there is otherwise. They're like, everything's fake. And also Donald Trump is the super Hitler antichrist that he's going to kill all of us. And we're all going to die. Quick, put on this hat of beautiful Reynolds wrap. A lot of the country's cutting that out. And right now you have a Congress, a Republican side of the aisle that's not focusing on that at all. And we're going to get to that. You have some administration officials who are also focusing on actually upholding some certain statutes that we're going to get into here at the end of this commercial break. And then you have a group of those on the left who, like Eric Swalwell, like Ilhan Omar, like Rosa DeLauro, if I haven't already said the name, I then add into that list Chris Murphy, all the way from Bernie Sanders to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, that truly believe all of this wildly insane stuff. And that's what they're taking to the American people. For example, there's rumor that was pushed today that Americans can't afford healthcare, but Kid Rock got to address the Pentagon on the Straits of Hormuz. Not even remotely true. Kid Rock was brought in to do kind of like a morale boosting kind of a show thing for some of the folks at the Pentagon. That was it. But we got to connect it all like it's some wild conspiracy. Don't do this. Don't be goofy. But there's more news to cover. We got to get into some of these major investigations because it's way more than the FCC. It's the Tony Kinnett cast. We got to bring that radio crew back from commercial. Do not go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett cast. Let's talk about some of the other really, really big investigation style stuff from the administration. Some really huge things that are not getting nearly enough coverage regarding everything from, major fraud all the way over to child abuse investigations. So right off the forefront here, former senior NIAID official, that would be in this particular instance. I want to make sure we get the name right here. Dr. Morans and his co-conspirators deliberately concealed information and falsified records during the COVID-19 pandemic in an effort to suppress alternative theories regarding the origins of the COVID-19 virus from Wuhan. He said, quote, government officials have a solemn duty to provide honest, well-grounded facts and advice in the service of this public interest. So, big press release, again, a series of convictions coming forward from the Department of Justice. This brings us over to Immigration Customs Enforcement, which has done all kinds of stuff. In fact, they are currently in Minneapolis, along with the FBI and the U.S. Department of the Treasury, not just focusing on illegal immigration, but also on stopping a series of child abuse situations, as well as a series of fraudulent business practices, wire fraud, bank fraud, immigration fraud, Medicare fraud, even more on top of what we already have regarding the situation in Minneapolis. In Illinois, the picture on the screen is of Amanda Lee Forez. She's a U.S. citizen from Illinois who was paid thousands of dollars to have other individuals make sexual torture videos involving adult and baby monkeys for people in various online chat groups known as, quote, animal crush videos, end quote. They also show real monkeys being burned alive and having their genitals mutilated. She pleaded guilty back on April the 15th following an ICE Homeland Security of New Orleans and also the FBI joint investigation. So again, Immigration Customs Enforcement carrying out a series of investigations and also bringing through individuals to trial that are just really sick and gross. That brings us over to Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa and the Small Business Administration from the Biden years. So we've had on a member of the Small Business Administration before. Essentially, they are in charge of, in certain emergency situations, dealing with special regulations and loan programs and grant programs from the federal government to state and local level business grant operation, taxation, insurance dealings, that kind of a thing. During the COVID years, the Biden administration, according to the Daily Signal's Fred Lucas, this being a letter sent by Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, Joni, not Jody. The Biden administration, which couldn't just go out and give a bunch of loans to Planned Parenthood, because again, your tax dollars are not supposed to go to abortion programs. That'd be the Hyde Amendment. The Biden administration decided to do that anyway and gave a bunch of loans to who? Well, it gave a bunch of loans to Planned Parenthood, not just openly, because if it gave a bunch of, even in kind of the email situation here, sorry, we'll pull that one back up here, move past that Time article. If the Biden administration had just had a bunch of communications regarding Planned Parenthood and giving a bunch of loans to them, then the FOIA requests could have found this. A FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, is when you send in a request of a public entity and you say, hey, I need all of your communications regarding this because, again, taxpayer dollars go to your organization. I need you to give me all of the information regarding these keywords or these communications between this individual, this time and date, because of transparency. The Biden administration covered this up by a series of emails that were classified and labeled under the code name Benghazi. So Ernst, the chairwoman of the Senate Small Business Committee, has been investigating Small Business Administration loans to the nation's largest abortion provider under the Paycheck Protection Program during the COVID-19 pandemic. In a letter sent Monday to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, Ernst asked for a DOJ investigation, quote, for potential Federal Records Act violations by concealment or attempted concealment, that's a very serious felony, of Small Business Administration records regarding loans to Planned Parenthood and loan forgiveness. Essentially, they labeled it Benghazi so that people couldn't email in and say, hey, are you giving money to Planned Parenthood during this? You say, Tony, why does this matter? There were Catholic organizations that were demanding from the Biden administration guarantees that there weren't up to $80 million in Small Business Administration interest-free forgiven loans, so checks, to abortion groups like Planned Parenthood, who do not provide just, well, they're just for, mammograms and pap smears and, just like reproductive care. Ask women who have gone to Planned Parenthood for just screening for cancer. They will tell you they are treated like cattle and often and come away with more bruises than should ever be in any part of a gynecology exam. Abortion is, in fact, without any question, they'll tell you themselves, that is their bread and butter. And they sought over $80 million in loans, according to our Fred Lucas, from the Biden administration who covered it up. Because again, at the time we were told, oh, there's no evidence. In fact, remember, Time magazine wrote this huge article, abortion clinics are rapidly closing because of all of this, all of the shut-ins and the lockdowns, the quarantine. People aren't going out and, just humping like animals anymore. And they're not having kids, outside of marriage. And there's not enough abortions. It's terrible, terrible stuff. And so the Biden administration gave them a bunch of just, hey, no problem, we'll just forgive you a bunch of loans. That is a major, major scandal. So again, go over to dailysignal.com, check out Fred Lucas's article on that. It's truly incredible. In fact, I'll go ahead and paste that link into the YouTube live chat. There you go. If it lets me post it, I think it should. There you go. You can read that for yourself. It's wild. That brings us to Lee Zeldon from the EPA, a man who was honestly, I think, is on the short list for becoming the Attorney General. Although Todd Blanche clearly knows what he's doing at this instant. He showed up in front of Congress to discuss in a committee hearing how the Environmental Protection Agency is carrying out federal law. And this led him into a pretty incredible couple of tangles with Rosa DeLauro, a weird old lady that dyes her hair purple and does bizarre influencer videos like she's 21 years old. And I guess that's what she decides to classify as serving her constituents. Lee Zeldon, you guys know how I feel about congressional committees. Truly one of the master classes of all time in how you conduct yourselves in one of these committees. Disappointed parent, doesn't get loud and angry. Enjoy.
When climate change is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up healthcare and disaster costs, how can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change?
So already, you have the leading question. That's what these committees are for. They're for C-SPAN. You got C-SPAN 1, C-SPAN 2, C-SPAN 3, C-SPAN 8, the Ocho, Corn Cob TV span, the exciting, the committee. It's their time to shine. They want to get out there. They ask leading questions. So I have here this paper in front of me, and I've been looking over these documents, and these say you're Hitler. So how long have you been Hitler, and when did you stop beating your wife, Mr. Zeldon? He answers very calmly, where in the statute that you are claiming to cite does it say anything about the EPA having to fight climate change? Again, which the data shifts from month to month.
Loper-Bright, Supreme Court case, you familiar with it?
No, I maybe others are. I'm not, but let me ask.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper-Bright says that we, as an agency, don't have the authority to get creative. If Section 202 of the Clean Air Act,
no, but you don't have. Excuse me, you do not have the right to say climate change does not exist. That it's a hoax, and that's where this administration is coming from.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper-Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because
you know what the major policies doctrine is.
You know what, let me just.
You're a member of Congress. You should know.
Well, you're
incredible. 10 out of 10. No questions, beautiful. The purpose of Congress, again, what Congress is actually supposed to do, they're supposed to do two things. Number one, they are supposed to know the law. And within that, you also, as a congressman or congresswoman, you should know, representative or senator, what the laws are. That's why you're on committees. For example, my representative, Jefferson Shreve, who I had a pretty rocky start to our correspondence and has now surprised me by, for example, refusing to sign the Dignity Act. Although Maria Salazar was like biting his ear off in the Foreign Affairs Committee, he's supposed to know the laws on foreign affairs. That's his job. Radio Crew will send you guys a commercial. We're going to continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, Rosa DeLauro is supposed to know the law here. That's her job. And she's also supposed to know this thing called precedent. Precedent is what have federal courts ruled on in the past. Because a judge at a district level, at the appellate level, or everybody's favorite, the Supreme Court level, they rule on the constitutional interpretation. And judges have the ability, have the constitutional obligation to define which laws are not constitutional. That's how they can strike those down or render them null, in part or in whole. In today's day and age, you can offer piecemeal nonsense on bills, apparently. So she's supposed to know this. Does she know any of this? Does she know about the bill that governs the EPA? No. Does she know about the Supreme Court cases? No. But Scott Zeldon does.
You have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden
Being very defensive about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last year with regards to your question.
You are very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment.
Okay.
Now, you just tell
Do you want me to tell you what the two biggest Supreme Court cases are of the last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA.
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second.
Wow, just so angry. Wow, you're here because you need money, and I'm mad, and
I love it. I do. Truly, deeply, sincerely, I love it. It's incredible. And the reason in this instance that it is so incredible to watch this is throughout this entire experience, throughout this entire ordeal, truly, what you see is a group of congressmen and women who, whenever they get pushed back on even slightly, especially on the Democrat side of the aisle, they immediately melt down. And so at the beginning, she thinks she's smug. She's going to get him into a kind of a corner here, leading question. By the end of this, she's like, you need to, you're here to ask us money? And she starts waving her hands around, and it's like she's going to go into hypertension at any second.
Changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment.
Okay.
Now, you just tell
Do you want me to tell you what the two biggest Supreme Court cases are of the last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA.
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the question.
Well, I answered your question,
No, you
and you didn't like my answer because you
did
don't
not
know what
answer the
Loper Bright is,
question.
because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is,
Chairman,
because you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want to do is to deny.
No, I actually read the law. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law.
No,
I
Mr.
read the
Chairman,
Supreme
I don't have
Court
to listen
cases.
to this, and I would say
No,
this,
what you should do for your constituents is actually read statute.
The budget is at real risk.
Read
Let
your
me tell
Supreme
you,
Court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh,
you come here.
You care
and
about
you
science?
tell
Now
us-
you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
Because
science.
you don't know what Loper Bright is. Because you don't know what the major policies doctrine.
Incredible. That, by the way, this is how you actually do a fundamental debate like this. This is, if I had to say, what is my style, my preferred style of debate here, it is letting them prove to the entire world they have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea what they're talking about. It is a precious, beautiful thing to see. We're going to bring the radio crew back from commercial, and we'll leave Bob Menendez alone for right now. People not knowing what they're talking about, you're going to want to stick around for this. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
I love my job so much. And one of the reasons that I love my job so much is I get to report on atrocious PR disasters. So you have been told, and by the way, I get this often as well. Whenever I criticize Ilhan Omar, or I criticize Ketanji Brown Jackson, or I criticize Jasmine Crockett and the questions she asks, I'm always told about, how amazing their education background. Oh, don't you know, they went to Harvard and they're so intelligent, and they know so much more than you, that kind of stuff. Well, then we get beautiful, incredible clips. Like, remember, and I'll never forget as long as I live, I'm sure you won't either, AOC, Mrs. Master of Economics, thinking that Deloitte is not an accounting firm, but a chemical manufacturing company that set Cleveland's river on fire and all that other stuff, but also 200 miles south of that and in West Virginia. Yeah, or having two branches of government. That's the AOC special. Ilhan Omar, the latest person who you're definitely not allowed to make fun of. And I know you guys have probably seen this clip by now. Ilhan Omar, when reading about the Alien Enemies Act and the last time it was used. Again, she doesn't mention, by who, which president it was that instituted this, because the Democrats and too many Republicans hold Franklin Delano Roosevelt up on this pedestal, which you shouldn't, because he was not a good man at all. But anyway, here she is talking about the Alien Enemies Act, and then she has to read the abbreviation for World War II. Doesn't go very well.
The last time the Alien Enemies Act was invoked, it was used to detain and deport German, Japanese, Italian immigrants during World War XI.
Ah, yeah! World War XI!
World War XI. Welcome to the Quality Leering Center.
Incredible. World War XI. Now you may be saying, Tony, aren't there only like 2 world wars? Actually, there's 3. I know, sorry. World War Zero would be the 7 Years' War. I actually argued this in a college paper that no one read and you shouldn't read either. But that's not important right now. So you've got the prequel World War, the 7 Years' War, goodness, a beautiful 7-year fight over controlling Ohio. Good stuff. As we would call it here in the States, the French and Indian War. But anywho, that's just, countries who've been to the moon, calling it that. Then you've got World War I. The shooting of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, wanting to settle the whole Serbian situation. And, we can just put all of these, different Balkan countries together and it'll be fine. And Austria-Hungary showing that ethnic incest superiority really doesn't produce the best officers. And then, Germany having its issues, and then the French being the French, and then the Brit, World War I. And then World War II. Funny mustache man and Tojo and, but Ilhan Omar saying World War XI is especially bad. It is, because you shouldn't, first of all, you should know what Roman numerals are. You're a congresswoman. Number 2, you really should know there's only been 2 world wars, but I have been asked by many of you what the other world wars are, and if we did in fact know. So here they are. World War I, World War II, Two World, Two War, then World War, Return of the World. Return. I figured, get a little extra excitement in there, for the kids. So then, after World War, Return of the World, oh, there it is. There you go. Then you have World War Generations for the Trekkies. You have Around the World War for the Daft Punk fans. World War VIII, the Ocho, that was fought entirely with dodgeballs. War of the World's Wars, which we won by a kid sneezing on illegal aliens. Then the War of the Baudelaire Orphans, and either Jim Carrey or Neil Patrick Harris, depending on how old you are, A World of Unfortunate Wars. Then World War XI, and coming soon to a theater near you, The 12 Wars of Christmas. I've got a hunch it's going to be festive. So I know you're not on her level of intelligence. I hope that you enjoyed a little of that. Now, Ilhan Omar did have quite a bit to be excited about, though. All of the No Kings protests that she encourages and supports. Very, very important. Well, she was seen today clapping like a floundering seal for King Charles, who came to address the United States today. So I guess that sometimes she actually is okay with kings when it suits her. But not trying to get too intense there. I will admit King Charles did a phenomenal job in World War VIII defending the United States from the Narnians. Truly never going to forget the Battle of the Bridge to Terabithia. I can see why she likes King Charles, the 1T11th. So anyway, putting old Ilhan away for a second, some other Democrats are having it pretty bad as well. Zoran Mamdani has now announced his 3rd budget crisis. Holy crap. This man, who, by the way, whose brilliant plan for how his state-run grocery store was gonna have way more money and be way less expensive was to make the grocery store exempt from regulations and taxes. Sweet mother of Moses floating in a basket down the Nile. The self-awareness of Helen Keller at a David Copperfield show. I mean, yikes. Anyway, Zoran Mamdani has announced his 6th beautiful budget crisis. No money. We got to raise taxes on all of the state of New York. Well, Kathy Hochul is begging on hand and hoof to bring billionaires back to New York. Here's Zoran Mamdani.
New York City faces a budget crisis of a historic magnitude. We inherited a deficit larger than any since the Great Recession. Years of mismanagement and chronic underbudgeting, alongside a structural imbalance between what New York City sends to the state and what we receive in return, have taken a toll. We cannot close this deficit with savings alone. We need new revenue. And we need a structural reset in our relationship with the state. That is the only way to meet our legal obligation to pass a balanced budget, and to do so without imposing a financial burden onto the backs of working people. I'm glad to partner with Speaker Menon as we call upon Albany and deliver a balanced budget. Together, we are extending the executive budget deadline from this coming Friday until May 12th.
Okay. Way to go there, Zoran. Best of luck to you. You know? I mean, way to go, New York. I hope you enjoy what is truly a remarkable decision for Zoran Mamdani there. So thrilling stuff. Radio crew, we'll catch you guys later. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right. Now, we're going to talk about some of the international news. Oh, you thought we were done just because the radio and the TV broadcast crews are out? No. Nope. Not at all. We've got far more news to cover because the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he made an announcement this morning. He says, Iran has just informed us that they are in a state of collapse. They want us to open the strait, the Hormuz Strait, as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So the President of the United States gets out there and says, with much excitement, hullabaloo, and to-do, that the Iranians are in a state of collapse. They still have no leader to decide whether or not the Iranians are going to make a deal or not. What the president is saying here was initially, I was expecting scorn and, okay, I've heard this before. Nope, I didn't. I looked on the various foreign policy outlets of the day, normally with such snark. The ones who told me Iran is winning the war, the AI video of Jesus slapping Donald Trump told me so kind of people. Yeah, I'm not really seeing that, Jan. I'm not seeing that at all. In fact, what I am seeing are individuals from the Iranian parliament being overshadowed now by random members of Iran's clerical Ayatollah Jr. class, coming forward and making bizarre announcements. No one knows where several members of the Iranian regime are right now. There are several individuals who were at the forefront of leading things. Remember, we used to see President Pezekian, President Pez Dispenser, Pezekistan, President Pancakes. We saw Foreign Minister Arachi. And then we saw Ghalibaf, not Gandalf, Ghalibaf, the head of the parliament. Every single day they were out there rooting and tooting and saying that the war was almost over and they were going to make all of these announcements and the Strait of Hormuz was going to open. Presto. I mean, just, aloha mora. It was going to be incredible. And then that didn't happen too much. And the IRGC, after saying, no, Strait of Hormuz is closed. Sorry, pay toll. And then they shot the boats anyway. And then lost a bunch of their minds in the Strait of Hormuz. Well, now we're not seeing so much of those Iranian officials anymore, which is kind of suspicious. We still haven't heard anything of Muqtada Khomeini. And so a couple of new reports from the region are suggesting that Iran is now losing complete control of any communication with Hezbollah and the Houthis. This was their last ace in the hole. So the Iranians wanted the Yemeni Houthis down there at the southern tip, the south, I can't really say southwestern, but the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. They really wanted the Houthis not to threaten to shut the Red Sea passage into the rest of the ocean. And now the Houthis are coming out there and saying that despite the IRGC telling them not to. So they're losing control of their proxy groups. And the reason they didn't want the Houthis to shut the Red Sea and harass all of the shipping there is because if the Houthis harass the shipping there, Houthis aren't friendly to boats from China. Houthis aren't friendly to boats from Russia. Houthis aren't friendly to boats from Botswana, the landlocked country. Wink. Houthis aren't friendly. They just shoot at anybody. Because they went to the Quality Luring Center and they're retarded. So, hey, incredible. So the Iranian regime's having a really rough time, and it's worse because you may remember OPEC, the Middle Eastern Petroleum Alliance of super duper kids, of which the Saudis are a part of. And then up until the announcement today, the United Arab Emirates. The United Arab Emirates has announced they are now leaving OPEC, the group that would set all of these special quotas to kind of go against the United States if Trump got a little too uppity, saying, hey, maybe we don't need any Middle Eastern oil. Then the Saudis, and then again, maybe the UAE and other countries in OPEC would say, oh, okay, Iraq would be the country I'm referring to. We're going to curb our oil production and make gas prices go up until you play nicely. Well, the Iranians have upset the UAE so much through direct missile attacks and drone attacks against their country, not just U.S. bases as they were originally pinky promised. And again, the Iranians were so inaccurate that they were smacking the sides of residential buildings and apartment complexes and, of course, oil refinery infrastructure. The UAE has said, fine, we're just going to leave. This is huge. You are seeing the Abraham Accords move into place in real time. The Lebanese and the Israelis, the UAE and the Israelis, freaking Qatar expelling Hamas. Now Hamas has no place to lay their head. No goats left in the hostels of Qatar for the Hamas leadership. Oh. And now the UAE working with Israel and the United States on oil production? Uh-oh. If OPEC can't impose quotas on how much oil they're allowed to sell to the rest of the world, the price of crude oil is about to drop through the floor. Oh no. Oh no, indeed, for those who told me it was all over. So, as a quick reminder here, OPEC produces 40% of the oil supply in the entire world. And not only do they produce that as a cartel, they dictate production, therefore meaning oil prices. The UAE is number 3 in the largest oil supply in OPEC. And I've always butchered this name. It's not going to change today. They also have the Fujairah pipeline, which totally bypasses the Strait of Hormuz at all. That is very, very much not a good situation for the Iranians and also for the rest of OPEC. If the Saudis leave OPEC, then it's over.
Well, how the turntables.
Now, onto a little report from the United States Central Command. Prior to the U.S. blockade on Iran, 5 whole ships were moored or anchored in the Iranian port of Shah Bahar on an average day. I actually accidentally played this B-roll. I had it slotted, I think, in kind of the wrong place. Let me try to find that and pull it up here. It's a slideshow in OBS. I don't have them all individually linked. There you go. Right on the Gulf of Oman, a beautiful tourist destination supreme. So the Central Command has announced that today more than 20 vessels remain in Shah Bahar as U.S. forces have cut off economic trade going into and coming out of Iran through the ongoing blockade. You say, Tony, why does this matter? Why do I care about this? Who gives the flip of a wooden nickel that Iran is playing these particular games? That the United States has basically forced more ships to stay in port. The more ships there are in port, the fewer resources there are on the port cities. The economy of Iran is no more. The leadership is having any extreme amounts of trouble encouraging any kind of boats attempting to come close to the Persian Gulf because the U.S. Marines, which everyone, including yours truly, thought was just going to take Karg Island and call it a day, instead are doing a little piracy, a little yard. I see you're violating the sanctions, the secondary, the tertiary, the quaternary, perhaps even the quintuplenary sanctions we've put on Iran. We're going to take your boats. And we're taking boats. I'm sorry. I'm enjoying this. First of all, that's just great experience for the United States Marines. There's nothing Marines love more than taking someone else's boats, especially Muslim pirate boats or boats bound for Muslim pirates. Now, there is a Russian yacht of sorts that is theoretically, I guess, according to the billionaire Alexei Mordashov, he's an ally of Vladimir Putin, did sail, reportedly, this according to CBS, through the Strait of Hormuz overnight from April 24th to 25th. Despite the blockade, it traveled from Dubai over to Muscat, Oman. And one of the reasons that it was allowed to pass is, first of all, because the Marines confirmed that this particular yacht was not going to anything Iranian. And number two, because if the Iranians touch one of Russia's boats, they are well and truly ruined. There is an additional report that has come out from multiple outlets in the Middle East, as well as one commentary outlet over from Belarus, pointing out that the meeting between Putin's administration and the foreign minister Arachi did not go well at all, because the Iranians basically went in and demanded Putin to uphold their alliance of old. And Putin said, no, peace off. And then that was kind of it. They're like, we'll do a little posturing for you. You know, we'll say, hey, the UN should appoint you to the council of who gives a goat. But that's kind of it. So Iran's, I'm just going to be clear, just because Iran cleric Kahbi has now come forward and announced, a member of the Assembly of Experts, again, they couldn't get Mojtaba Khomeini because he's, dead. But anyway, the Iran cleric, random man, says that, hey, regarding these negotiations, if we're even going to talk about nuclear enrichment, then we're not negotiating right now. In fact, nuclear enrichment and making nukes, that's off the table for now. You know, that's like totally not even, in the books. Okay. All right, sport. That's real special. Thank you. Thanks for that. That's, again, you little scamp. Beautiful. Now, according to Reuters, just I want to make sure we get this right. At 7:30 p.m., so 37 minutes ago, the Idemitsu Maru tanker carrying Saudi oil did cross the Strait of Hormuz. If the United States blockade is working, and the Iranians, we don't know yet. This would be the speculation portion, but I am now seeing a couple of different reports suggesting that the Iranians are not doing such a good job of harassing the ships moving through the Strait of Hormuz, then it ain't going too well. And also, that means that the president's post from this morning where he said, and I quote, Iran has informed us they're in a state of collapse. They want us to open the Hormuz Strait as soon as possible. Oh my gosh. I'm starting to figure out why. They don't have the ability to keep it closed. Huh. Boy, I tell you what, man, those inches, they are sure resting. Interesting, indeed. This brings us over to the Germans, because, of course, the Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, who originally came out and said, we stand strong and we are not getting involved and Trump is dangerous. And everyone said, okay. And then he came out after the ceasefire initially went into effect and Iran had agreed to open the Strait of Hormuz. And he said, aha, we have done it. Yes, success. Yes, we have opened the Strait of Hormuz. I am the great Friedrich Merz. Ah, yes. Quick, somebody play Erica. Oh, gosh, no, don't play Erica. Sorry. Now he's flip-flopped yet again. Yeah, Friedrich Merz now has come around to the idea that it's okay maybe if we make a deal with Iran where they have some nuclear enrichment. I mean, come on. Sure, we just said 2 weeks ago they couldn't have a nuclear weapon or any nuclear material. But come on. No one knows more about managing dangerous assets quite like the Germans. And Trump commented on this. The Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, thinks it's okay for Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. If Iran had a nuclear weapon, the whole world would be held hostage. Survey says that is true. I am doing something with Iran right now that other nations or presidents should have done long ago. No wonder Germany is doing so poorly, both economically and otherwise. It took quite a bit to take Germany from the powerhouse, the Federation, Federation Germany, West Germany, during the Cold War, the economic powerhouse of Europe that it was, and then turn it into this disaster field of selling themselves out for such cuckery. Now, finally, this brings us to the last bit of foreign policy of the day. That would be King Charles comes to the United States. His great state visit. And the White House began with a picture of King Charles and the President of the United States smiling with each other. And they captioned it, "Two Kings." Kids, that would be what we call bait. Very high quality bait at that. And all of the Democrat and left-wing individuals immediately started losing it and screeching like a zoo in the comments. I mean, it's truly marvelous. But we won't focus on that, at least just now. On this particular royal visit to the United States, King Charles, King Charles, he had a couple of things that I thought were pretty interesting in his address. He's more pro the UK than the Prime Minister of the UK. Just to make that clear up front here, I'd say King Charles cares far more about England, at least in word, maybe not deed, than Keir Starmer. Here he was talking about the bond of kinship between the United States and England.
The special ingredient in our relationship, as President Trump himself observed during his state visit to Britain last autumn, the bond of kinship and identity between America and the United Kingdom is priceless and eternal. It is irreplaceable and unbreakable.
And then everyone clapped, and yeah, all right, that was good. I think there was a representative that was dressed as George Washington during this, which is just incredible. I sure hope that on his way out that somebody, chucked some tea, into a body of water nearby. He did talk about the importance of rededicating this tie between the United States. I will talk about that in a second. First, though, I do appreciate the quoting of great literature throughout history. And he did so here, and it got a good laugh, and it should have. It was a very, very a good citation here, joke from King Charles.
For all of that time, our destinies as nations have been interlinked. As Oscar Wilde said, we have really everything in common with America nowadays, except, of course, language.
That's a great joke. That's a good joke. Okay. Now we get to the last statement from King Charles, talking about the need to rejuvenate, to revivify this rededicate this bond between the United States and the UK. This is an interesting call, again, from the not a foreign head of the country, again, because it's a ceremonial thing, but still.
And so to the United States of America, on your 250th birthday, let our two countries rededicate ourselves to each other in the selfless service of our peoples and of all the peoples of the world. God bless the United States, and God bless the United Kingdom.
Now, I'm seeing in the comments, like, why is he here? We don't have kings in the United States. Easy, champ. We'll get there. I promise. We'll talk about it. Why here, the 250th year, do we bring King Charles? We'll get there, my man, my dude. Relax. But first, why there are a couple of Americans, myself included, who look at this, we need to rekindle, we need to, rededicate this bond between the United States and England. Unless you are a nation that is worth rededicating a bond with, I do not want to see this country strengthen its ties with you. England has a major issue with Muslim and certain other groups of individuals in their country that are creating bizarre laws that are protecting for child trafficking, that are protecting for rape and abuse. The United Kingdom is a shell of its former self, not just in His Majesty's empire, which is long gone. He has forfeited his empire and was bullied by the Soviets and also a little bit by Eisenhower into doing so. In this instance, you are making a call for us to rededicate yourselves, or to rededicate ourselves as Americans with, again, Teddy Roosevelt did this going into the 1900s. There was a huge shift in policy after we had brokered a border dispute in Colombia between the United Kingdom and a South American group. And the British allowed us to arbitrate, which is when the United Kingdom officially, right at the turn of the century, said the US is the boss of this hemisphere. So that was the moment when we started getting a closer tie together. History Matters has an excellent YouTube video on this. I highly recommend it. But Teddy Roosevelt recognizing that the rest of Europe sucks, that Europe and whether it's the continent on Germany, or whether it's France, or whether it's Eastern Europe as a whole, or whether it's Benelux, they have issues. And so better that the United States stands with the rest of the Anglosphere. Great. It was not the United States that walked away from the Anglosphere. Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom elected and maintained radically left parliaments and radically left leadership. The conservative parties in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, are still wildly regulatory on guns, are still remarkably regulatory and restrictive on free speech in their policies. I thought that Pierre Poilievre in Canada, as a conservative leader, had a lot of really good things going for him. He was still far too liberal to be elected to an office in the United States. The Anglosphere moved to the left and imported its problems. Until they rectify that, no. You decided, and again, this isn't the fault of King Charles at all. We'll get to the King Charles thing, but just the call itself. Keir Starmer, as the real head of the United Kingdom, has some work to do. And as long as Europe is right now in this state where they're very upset, Europe and NATO, in general, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I know the New York Times thought it was the North American Treaty Organization, but the New York Times is, very retarded. Regarding NATO, they're very upset that the United States has halted some weapons shipments to Eastern Europe and Ukraine, and as well to the rest of Europe, because Europe and NATO aren't coming to the aid of the Strait of Hormuz for their own bleeping products that are sailing through that strait. So, hey, you got to get your own house in order first. You said you're big boys and girls. You take care of Russia then. Now, why invite the king over to the United States? As our 250th, having the king kind of like pay obeisance to the United States, having the king be forced, the King of England, to be forced to say, God bless the United States of America, and praise this country on its 250th birthday, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. But we don't like it. That's not what it's about. It's not about endorsing a constitutional monarch. Don't be weird. The point is, first of all, it is good to have other heads of state over to the country and speak before Congress. By speaking before Congress, that is an invitation and a point of honor, and forces you to recognize and praise the beauty of the American experiment and its current progeny. That's good stuff. That is in and of itself great stuff. So we're going to leave over there, and there are a couple other things that I want to touch on this evening. For example, the Virginian Supreme Court placing a hold on, the Virginia Supreme Court denied the Democrat Attorney General Jay Jones demand that they pause the lower court order that we had reported on that had blocked the had blocked the redistricting constitutional amendment that was written like Facebook terms and conditions. And a Virginian court ruled, yeah, you didn't do this right. And also, you can't try to confuse people on a constitutional ballot referendum, especially when you're trying to rush to do it before the midterm election. I'm not sure. Producer Daniel, would you give me a glance here? What's the primary date in Virginia? And what's the cutoff for registering as a candidate for Congress in Virginia? I'm a little curious as to the rules there, because that's the real date that they're rushing against. In Indiana, you have to register by February. In Indiana, primary, May 5th is coming up. So, in Virginia, they're kind of rushing up against stuff here. So, that all said, Jay Jones, the guy who said he'd really like to see his political opponents shot and killed, that fine piece of trash, he whined to the Virginia Supreme Court, please block this lower court order so they can kind of get things set up. Because if the election is allowed to be certified, then you can actually have candidates start to say, this is the new district, I'm running for office in this district. And you can go about that way. So The primary election is scheduled for August 4th. Gee, many Christmas, that's late. Thanks, producer Daniel, for looking that up for me, pal. Ugh, my goodness. So, anywho, good on the Virginia Supreme Court. Basically, they said, no, this is on hold because you can't certify the election now and force us to go back over it later. So the last day to file for congressional candidates in Virginia is July 14th. We're not racing. Thank you very much. Producer Daniel, you're just a quality man. Comment section, you should tell Producer Daniel how amazing and incredible and dashingly handsome he is. So if we're racing July 14th, that's coming up soon. That's coming up soon. That's less than 3 months away for this to be battled in court. And if Virginia is telling Jay Jones no, producer Daniel is saying wait. Well, hang on then. I was all praising you. You can't have me retract my praise, producer Daniel. Come on. Oh my, it's even worse than I thought for them. Never mind. According to producer Daniel, the House of Representatives here, May 25th of 2026 by 5 p.m. for U.S. House of Representatives candidates. It's Virginia state officials that are July 14th. That's a very, very good one. That's even better. So we got to go to May 15th? Or excuse me, May 25th? Survey says that's less than a month away. Oh no for the Democrats. Oh, yikes. A big large F to good old Jay Jones there. So that's according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Thank you very much, producer Daniel. What a guy. All right, we're going to bring on Sean Spicer. Now, I'm wearing something a little different because we're supposed to have played this interview with him yesterday on Trump 2.0. We've talked a lot about how administration officials are doing this, but not this. What does it mean when an individual is replaced? Does it mean it's the end of the world? Are things chaotic? That kind of a difference. Don't go anywhere. Some excellent stuff here. And that'll bring us over to. Good to have Sean Spicer, good friend, over here on the show with us. Of course, Trump 2.0 is the new book. Excellent stuff there. Sean, break it down for us. Not a bad week to get that one released with everything going on.
Well, first of all, thank you, Tony. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I hope so, because this really explains a lot. And there's an actual chapter about the White House Correspondents' Dinner, why I think it's a bad idea. So in a way, there's a lot in here that deals with current events. But the point of Trump 2.0 is to make sure that people understand what I like to say is the why. Why is this going to be significant? Why is it going to be different? Because normally, I mean, frankly, Trump is only the second president in U.S. history to have 2 terms, but not be sequential, and the first one in modern history. So the question is, well, what makes this different? And I always say that it's the people, the policy, and the processes. What did he learn? And I talked about this with the president in the Oval Office the other day, where he was like, Sean, we had a great first term and da-da-da. I'm like, I know this isn't in any way taking away from that, but the people that you've brought in this time are very different. Why? Because you knew them more, because people at the sub-cabinet level were vetted. America First Policy Institute, the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025. I have an entire list in here, Tony, of all of the groups that the Heritage Foundation brought in as part of Project 2025. It's 2 pages long to say, let's get the best conservative minds brought together and think about, you've got a mandate for leadership, I'm sure, right there in your office. Good. There you go. I've got my copy as well. Look at that. That was a blueprint. And I know it got a lot of mocking from the left during the campaign. But that blueprint that you have right there, the thickness of it just shows to people. That told Tom Homan, how can we do it? That gave Caroline Leavitt a lot of ideas. I mean, and I talk about the authors of it, right? These were people who wrote in that mandate for leadership, which is Project 2025. Here's how now, does it mean everyone took everything lock, stock, and barrel? No. What it does mean is that they had a starting point and they knew, okay, we want to address with this issue. Where should we start? What are the things? Who are the experts in this area? What should we think about? We didn't have that in 2016. When we won, it was trying to figure out who would be good for this. I tell people in the book, Jim Mattis spent a total of 1 hour with President Trump before he was named Secretary of Defense. He's known Pete Hegseth for like 15 years. You have to understand. And so Trump was a businessman, a reality star. Like, he came into office thinking that people had the best intentions. You know, and I know personally, a lot of people came into Trump 1.0 did not have the best intentions. And part of the point of Trump 2.0 is to explain to people that it's not just, you don't just pocket why it's different. Don't just go, okay, normally a president who's sequential, Obama, Bush, whatever, Monday becomes Tuesday, becomes Wednesday, the same chief of staff is there, the same secretary of state, the same secretary of defense, and you just keep working on the same projects. The reason that Trump 2.0 is so historic is because they had 4 years out of office to think, to plot, to plan. What will we do different? MAHA, NATO, defense strategy, education policy, all of these things, we had an opportunity to say, what will we do different?
When you're looking at this kind of a refresh, right? When you're looking at going from the foundation to a new application, different direction, kind of looking at stuff from back to the forward, there's this chance to get really offended whenever someone asks about what could be done better the second time than the first time, and the egos really start to take in and derail things. But that question isn't inherently insulting. It's saying, hey, look, we've got a chance. We've brought you back. We have all of these people. When you're pulling in everything for what you don't just want to be a second try, you want it to be something spectacular. You got to ask a couple of these questions, and they have to be answered directly. What have we seen from this administration so far? I feel like we've actually seen some addressing the first problems without a lot of the, well, actually everything is amazing and it doesn't need looked at. I've seen a lot of looking at the first term and seeing how we can do things in the second.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Look, in the military, I've spent 27 years in the Navy. And when you're done with an exercise, we always have these hot washes where we call it 3 up, 3 down. What did we do really well? What can we improve? So you acknowledge the good. And then you also say, but what can we do better? And I think, frankly, as I've said this all the time, that like any profession that you're involved in, right? So I'll give a speech, an interview, I'll stop after us. So what did I forget to tell Tony? What could I have said better, right? How do I improve the next interview that I do? Or what did I really like the way I presented that in our conversation. So if you're good at what you do, whether you're in sales or government contracting or a public official, you should always be thinking that way. What can I do better? And part of the point of Trump 1.0 versus Trump 2.0 is it's not insulting. It's to say, hey, we're in a very different place. We were meeting our counterparts in senior levels of government for the first time in like the Roosevelt room at meetings in the first few days. These folks had a familiarity with Trump that's very different. It's the nature of it. People ask me all the time about with respect, I got a chapter in here about the media and Caroline. Look, I think she's doing a phenomenal job, but let's be honest. When I came in with President Trump, it was very different. I didn't have the level of, she worked for President Trump in the first term. She campaigned with him. So she comes in with a much stronger sense of him. She had the ability to watch us in the first term, not just myself, but Sarah and Kaylee, who she worked for. What could we do better in the press office? I didn't have that. Like, there was nobody to go do. I met with all of my counterparts from the ground up. They all worked for like traditional people. So, no one had anything to like Trump. Like, there's no president that ever tweeted like he did, or that called media personalities. So it was just different. And again, I don't look at it personally. Like, she's able to do things because she's number 4. Right. Yeah. So I'm just saying that, like, I don't look at it as insulting. And when I talked to the president about this, I said, that's, when you used to build buildings, like when you build the next one, you go, you know what, let's make sure we put the elevator here, not there. Let's, you hopefully learn from your past experiences, but I am just by nature a very curious person, especially politically. And part of the reason I wrote Trump 2.0 was to explain to people, like, we wouldn't have a MAHA movement. We wouldn't be taking on cultural issues like the Trump Kennedy Center. Right. Trump never went to the Kennedy Center once. And now he's remaking the whole thing. It's renamed. He's redone the board. He's going to the Kennedy Center honors. Vastly different attempt to address this. And that's what I think is important.
I think so. And again, Trump 2.0, it's a great look at why staffing changes are made, not just, again, from one to the next, but also in the middle of an administration, because it's so easy from the media punditry side to go, oh, everything is going terribly, there have to be cleared out, to saying, no, we're in a different place in the administration now than where we were 4 months ago in this totally new way of framing things up. Sean, thanks for giving us a couple of minutes. Always good to have you.
Thanks for everything you guys do at the Daily Signal. Appreciate it.
All right, my friends, let's do just a smidgen. I think here at the end, a little bit of the old
mail time.
On the Tony Kinnett Cast.
You want to get a little question in mail time, get that answered our way. The best way to do so is to throw that over in our Discord chat. You can find a link to that in the YouTube description. So a couple of good questions this evening. First of all, from Hal 9004 over on the Discord mail time chat. Comey, I think Comey is gonna, get out of it again. What do you think? I need to see what the original argument from the prosecution is, and I actually need to sit down and do a little bit of research on who the judge is that's going to look at this case. That's what I need to see. Now, producer Daniel would theoretically know more about judges in North Carolina than I would, because, he's in North Carolina. But I don't know yet if a lot of federal judges don't even have a super politicized reputation on things. So I'm not entirely sure. Do I think that it's likely he's charged and given, 2 big 10-year prison sentences? No, I don't. I don't see that. So there you go. That's kind of my take. Do I think this is a positive step towards actually tamping down on that rhetoric? Yes, I do. And if it makes individuals be more careful before they get out there and call for assassinations and encourage that kind of a thing, that's not a bad thing. Recognizing that there could be consequences for encouraging threats against officials in the United States, no matter whom they may be, that is something that is going to have to take place. From Storm Rider, have the mines been cleared out of the Strait of Hormuz yet? The answer to that question is, we really don't know. There are several underwater drones that are currently active in the Strait of Hormuz. I cannot tell you whose they are. However, there are a lot of different kinds of boats and underwater things that are looking for mines in a lot of different ways. There is a whole world of mine detection equipment and the way that sonar is used underwater and various other kinds of energy bounce and echolocation retrieval detection, that kind of stuff. I don't think that I know that Iran doesn't know. They've already admitted that privately and somewhat publicly, that they've already lost a lot of mines and they've been drifting. But given that some of the boats are making it through the Strait of Hormuz without severe issue, I think that there may be fewer mines than originally anticipated. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Tony, what do you think of, from Trey, what do you think of Tommy Robinson and the upcoming rally? Tommy Robinson, this would be the United Kingdom guy, isn't it? This is the guy that I say his name accidentally instead of Tyler Robinson, the assassin of Charlie Kirk. And I always get myself in trouble because, Tommy Robinson. What do I think of the rally? I need to see the UK actually move forward until the police are too nervous to arrest the citizens in the United Kingdom for speaking out. That's what I need to see. Am I excited for the rally? No. I'm not convinced that the United Kingdom, I think there's going to be chances, like last chances for the Brits. But do I think that, they're going to turn things around? No, I don't. And the reason that I think that is the same reason I think that in the United States that we are not going to see the rhetoric toned down and a lot of problems avoided. So I was asked ages ago, said, hey, Tony, you talk about polls getting closer together all the time. What's your evidence for this? It was also a question I was going to answer tonight. 2 new polls today. One from Harris, and then an additional that's not showing up on my feed right now. But this latest this latest Harvard Harris poll shows that on the generic ballot, it is now tied. Republicans 50%, Democrats 50%. The reason that that's tied is for 2 reasons. Number one, because people just don't care. Right now, Republican voters are really not encouraged. They're not. They're not excited. They're not energized to go out and vote. I did see what I'd say is a remarkable amount of attendance in some of the Lincoln Day dinners and things around the state, more due to kind of contentious local elections than Republicans excited to get out and vote. And that's the reason I think that you're not seeing surging Republican numbers, Congress just isn't doing anything. They're not doing anything. We're not seeing things pass through the Senate because John Thune is afraid of the filibuster, like the groundhog is afraid of his own shadow. So that would be that particular reason. On the Democrat side, though, I mean, I do have this clip I'll play. You have Ro Khanna, who's kind of the loudest voice for the Democrats right now. He's replaced Eric Swalwell. Hakeem Jeffries is just insane and stupid. But like you've got Ro Khanna coming out, for example, right now, going again, like yelling about ICE and how ICE is really dangerous and they've ruined California, while ICE has done more to rescue illegal child labor from, like, for example, the California pot farms than any other federal agency. The Trump administration has rounded up record numbers of those in child trafficking and pedophilia and weird bestiality crap from Illinois. Ro Khanna invited a groomer of Epstein's to his State of the Union as his special guest. Anyway, here's Ro Khanna.
Is affecting people in both parties, that we both parties have a responsibility to address it.
Democrat voters, there are quite a few of them in the country who are watching the left refuse to condemn the Hassan Pikers, the guys openly calling for murder, that are saying it's good, that it's great, cut their intestines open, throw them on the stage, that guy. These Democrats refuse to call that kind of a thing out. It is absolutely going to hurt them, and it's going to hurt them. It's going to hurt them pretty quick. Here, listen to Ro Khanna here on Fox.
There should be a national commission, and we can look at concrete things. One, the role that social media is playing in amplifying the most sensational, outrageous content that sometimes incites violence. Second, looking at mental health issues. Third, looking at how we can have intervention when you have someone sick, like the person who was tried the attempted assassination on the president and his cabinet. How do we get earlier intervention? And finally, what are the standards of how we can all do better in our political rhetoric without violating the First Amendment? We want robust speech. People should be able to criticize me, but there's a difference between criticism and the incitement of violence.
Okay, so that's Ro Khanna. A lot of nothing, not useful, not condemning anything. When Democrats are pressed, again, not just on right-leaning networks, but for example, on News Nation, owned by Nexstar, I go on there pretty frequently. They are an excellent network. And to be clear here, they have no problem, at least a lot of the hosts on. Now, of course, they have like a right-wing kind of a host that does an hour, and they have a left-wing, I think Cuomo does an hour there. But as far as their actual anchors for the news programs, for example, Connell, if you slip as a correspondent, you're on, doing your segment here, and you start talking to Connell and you make the mistake of saying something kind of silly, he'll roast you over the coals. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. So News Nation took a representative, Representative Suhas Subramanyam, Representative Subaru Yams from Virginia's 10th Congressional, asked him about this again. Are you going to criticize? Are you going to take a moment and push back on the violent rhetoric? He won't do it. They won't do it. This is demoralizing, not just to independent voters, but to Democrat voters as well.
The reality is that there was just another attempt on President Trump's life, the third one in 2 years, and statistics do show that in 2025, for the first time, there was more political violence from the left than from the right.
We're going to talk about that statistic here in a second, because this Wall Street Journal article citing that, this is the first time there's been more left-wing violence than the right. That particular study does not point out that Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania was attacked by a rabid leftist. They're like, if it involves foreign things, Islamic terror attacks that's foreign stuff. Still, trying to assault and kill Christians and right-wing political figures in the United States, that's left-wing terrorism. It is. I give you the mayor of Dearborn and the people that he encourages. But they don't count those. Also, if you look at 2020, they don't count things like, again, the burning of Minneapolis, the burning of Kenosha. They don't count those as left-wing political violence. So it's a skewed study, but even the skewed study admits that right-wing violence is small, far, far, far smaller compared to left-wing violence right now. Here's Representative Subaru Yams of Virginia answering this.
There does seem to be a rising issue with political violence from the left. Do you agree?
No, I think there's political violence on both sides, and one is not greater than the other. And if Democrats are all responsible for any threats on President Trump's life, then he's responsible for the person who threatened my office and my life. So the reality is...
Okay, no. So, first of all, there's a difference between responsibility, again, like saying you need to go do this thing. In the same vein, if you are out saying this person is evil, he's Hitler, he's coming to get you, he's going to throw you in an unmarked van and dump you in a concentration camp where you're going to be raped, as Democrats have alleged about ICE and about President Trump personally, he's a pedophile, Hitler, Antichrist, super duper Satan man. Essentially, it's just Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jennifer Welch hyperventilating. Then, yeah, that is going to drive people. I don't remember President Trump ever mentioning Representative Subaru Yams before. I don't know. I mean, I've never, maybe he has. I've never seen it. But I mean, I don't think there exists evidence. If there is, I'll change my statement. I'll retract. Where Trump's ever been like, Representative Subaru Super Yams, he's, everyone should go hit him with sticks. No. I'm not seeing it.
This is an issue on both sides. It's going to take a bipartisan solution. And what's not helpful is actually blaming the other side every time an incident like this happens. It just fans the flames of violence even more.
Okay, so when someone writes in a manifesto, hey, Donald Trump is a pedophile, rapist, child trafficker, and he's all over the Epstein files, and that's it, that's all they're saying. Again, there is not a single shred of proof, a single shred of evidence anywhere that Trump has done anything wrong in that. I hear this all the time. I see it in the comment section. Oh, Trump's here. I haven't seen the evidence. I haven't. If there were evidence, if there were actual definitive thing, they would be on the cover. They would be the cover photo of every Democrat running for office, period. It's not there. And networks like CNN, News Nation, MS Now, the ladies over on The View, Axios, Bloomberg, they cannot say on the air or in their publications that Donald Trump is even accused in the files of doing any of this. They can't. Because they will be rightly accused of libel and defamation because it isn't there. But then when the Democrats get out there again, like this individual, and make the case, like Hakeem Jeffries, in front of the House and the Congress, oh, he's enabling this pedophile cult, then you have individuals who will in fact act on what you have just claimed.
It doesn't help, though, on the left when you have people like Hassan Piker, who has been embraced by many elected Democrats, who says some outrageous things on his social media platform. I mean, part of the problem is these social media platforms, these social media stars who...
Again, totally agree. The reason that I very much suggest you get off of Facebook, and I'm very clear about this, the Facebook algorithm, unlike the Instagram algorithm, which crazy as that sounds because they're owned by the same company, unlike the X algorithm or the YouTube algorithm, is currently built to show you the most oppositional thing to you. Facebook tracks your political leaning and then tries to show you adversarial content to whip you up into a frenzy. Twitter doesn't do that. Twitter does this a little bit of echo chambering. YouTube goes on what it is that you're watching mixed with what it is that it thinks you're seeking based on subject matter, categorizational tags, etc. So, I mean, yeah, there's a bit of truth to that. But also, again, when Hassan Piker gets up on whatever platform he's on, and then after getting up on those platforms and saying, kill Republicans, gut them, stab them, Senator from Florida, Rick Scott, needs to die, all of that just festering crap. And then he goes out there and he hangs out on stage with Bernie Sanders. And he's interviewed in a laughing, bubbly interview in the New York Times about stealing and murder and how fun it is. And, well, yeah. And then he, can't even be disavowed by Ezra Klein, who's supposed to be the moderate Democrat. The party's got a problem. So is Representative Subaru Yamanstan going to then follow up here with, you're right, Hassan Piker, we need to get rid of him, and instead we need to coalesce around what it is our constituents demand and desire.
Who say and do things that most people would never dream of saying and doing in polite, life just a few years ago.
Yeah, President Trump has lowered the bar in politics. That's the reality.
Okay. President Trump is it? That dog ain't gonna hunt. And that, by the way, is one of the last questions that I got in. Actually, this one via an email, asking me whether or not. All right, this was from Dave. Dave asked. I'm going to keep his last name out because it's kind of a specific last name. Dave asked me whether or not I believed that it was Trump's responsibility to essentially lower the environment that Dave asserts he created. Trump didn't create this environment. He didn't. Trump is not the planter. Trump is not the guy who has started all of this. I know a lot of people like to believe that. It's just not the truth. Trump is, as Ben Shapiro accurately states, I don't think he's the first to say it, but he is who consistently cites it the most. Trump is the coroner. Trump is the coroner. George W. Bush was called a Nazi. He was. I happen to remember during the McCain era that John McCain was called a virulent, horrible, awful, nasty, evil racist. I remember the numbers of attacks on Republicans during the initial Occupy Wall Street movement and the Bernie Sanders, he's going to do it this time, that was suggesting that all Republicans, they're going to get out there and they're going to kill you. That is what the congressional shooter who shot Steve Scalise said. It was about healthcare, and they're out there to kill people. They're going to murder all these people. Hakeem Jeffries, a couple days ago, was talking about, he said, Republicans are doing violence on Americans by not paying for their birth control. This is freaking weird. Romney, milquetoast Romney, Mormon mom jeans man, remember Joe Biden said he's going to put you all back in chains. No, Trump is the coroner. Trump is what happens when you take a group of people in the United States and then after Barack Obama gets elected, Michelle, and then gets out there and lambasts any white individual, any Republican individual, any Christian individual, any male individual, and brings in this era of woke BS, which says that because you exist, you need to apologize because by existing, you have made it really hard on people. The cops are out racial profiling everyone. I mean, not, the attempted assassin, Cole Thomas Allen. I mean, he's a black dude that made it right through. No profiling for him. Anyway, you were told, oh man, they're profiling all of the black and the brown people, whatever brown mean. Oh man, and you're responsible for every single little bit of it. And the American people finally said no. They were tired of the gaslighting, where the Democrat would walk in and pretend to be moderate like Hillary Clinton, and would accuse Republicans of doing the very things that they were doing, whether we're talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center, planning and funding the Charlottesville alt-right white supremacy rally, or whether we're looking at Hillary Clinton saying that people like Donald Trump, again, the most famous debate clip of all time in American history, right up there with Ronald Reagan saying he wouldn't make Mondale's youth and inexperience an issue in the election. The debate moment when Hillary Clinton said, Donald Trump uses all these tax breaks. And Jake Tapper said, Trump, do you use these tax breaks? He said, of course I do. And so do all of her donors. And if she hates it so much when she was in the Senate, why didn't she change it? Huge debate moment for all time. That is why Donald Trump has the reins. Because you were given all of this soft diplomacy for decades by those on the left and some on the right who would give you this soft diplomatic bullcrap as a gatekeep, so that you would trust their big fancy words from the thesaurus and the degrees stapled to their name, and then they would screw you over, and they would change all of the rules around, and then call you too stupid to understand. And that is why Donald Trump was elected. He came in and said, I'm from this world. I hate this world. It's garbage. We're going to toss it out. And for that reason, Donald Trump is, in the last couple of decades, the most important and impactful president of all time. He's the coroner. And so that said and aside, that's particularly where I think that is Donald Trump's responsible for this? No. Donald Trump is simply saying, in a lot of ways, you're going to play this game. All right, fine. We'll play by your rules. And a lot of people don't like that. What I don't appreciate, and what a lot of Americans don't appreciate, is we used to be a country of decorum. All of the thing. How dare Donald Trump say Jimmy Kimmel should be fired? There was comments today. Because again, I said, I don't see the issue with a husband responding to, your wife wants you dead, with, hey, I hope you get fired. And the responses I got was, well, actually, he's the president. It should limit his responses. He's not a husband first. First of all, Your faith and your marriage comes before anything else, period. Anyone who doesn't tell you that their faith in God and that their relationship, their marriage comes before the position that they've been elected to, don't trust them, throw them away, garbage. But anywho, he's president, he needs to, how dare he not restrain himself? American people would rather have a guy who tells you what is exactly on his mind, whether he be, believe it or not, Zoran Mamdani, whether he be Hassan Piker, whether he be Donald Trump. Doesn't matter. Americans would prefer this to this gaslighting, oh, you don't understand the decorum, while they're shivving you in the spleen. That's the new era of politics. Now, you say you want to get back to this? Well, you're going to need Americans to actually care. And so far, the school marming Americans to care ain't working. So you'll need a cultural and spiritual revival. And that's how I work around to that last point. So that all said, we'll see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern right here. You like the show, like and subscribe. Also in the description, seriously, go check out my colleague Fred Lucas's reporting on the Biden administration giving $80 million and then hiding it through the Small Business Administration to Planned Parenthood by labeling it Benghazi. Insane. That link is in the description. We'll catch you guys real soon. Again, 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow right here. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.